Over 100 years after the Ash War caused a global collapse, the world is a hostile place. No one knows how many remain. You were born and raised like everyone you know inside the vault. They've begun sending expeditions to search the old world, make contact with anyone there, and record what they find, in the hope that, someday, we could return to the surface. Now, it is your turn.
Hey guys, Carl from Purple Misplays. Today I'm going to be doing something quite a bit different than normal because I'm not going to be doing a board game playthrough or review. In fact, this is not going to be a board game at all. But it is from Inside the Box Board Games, a company you might recognize from their Subterra series of games. Today I'm taking a look at Alba, the first in Inside the Box's new open world adventure book series, written by Tom Anna and H.L. Truslove. Alba tells the story of a society who's living in what's known as the Vault, over 100 years after the world has been completely devastated in a horrible war. The story follows a character who's being sent from the Vault back to the old world on an exploratory mission, hoping to do a sort of reconnaissance and to learn the current state of the old world. And your decisions that you make throughout this story are going to determine the direction that this journey takes and ultimately determine the outcome and the end story that's being told in this book. That's right, your decisions are going to affect the story. If you've ever read a choose your own adventure book growing up, that sort of gives you the idea of what's going to be happening here. You're going to be reading passages, and at the end of every passage, you will be given a choice. And based on your choice, you will turn to a different page that will continue the story based on the choices that you're making. But that's sort of where the comparison ends. This is not a choose your own adventure book that's going to randomly throw a game end scenario at your face. Your character is not going to die. Nothing horrible is going to happen randomly based on a random choice that you've made in the book. This is also not a game book. There's no game here. This is not like a fighting fantasy or lone wolf story where you're rolling dice or checking tables or using stats to match some kind of goal or to win some sort of scenario. This is not a game. This is a book. In fact, this is more than a book. I'm going to say that this is a novel. And what's the difference? Well, the reason I call this a novel is because it's a complete story from start to finish, and the experience is quite a bit like reading any other novel that you enjoy reading. The difference here, though, is that you're going to be presented with choices, and based on the choices, the narrative of the novel is going to change. But it doesn't mean that the story is going to end abruptly. It just means that the story's overall narrative is going to be different. So you can read through the novel several times, and the story will change. The ending will change. But every single story, every single ending is going to be satisfactory. It's going to feel like you've read a complete story. And that's the first big thing that makes this stand out to me. So I've had a chance now to read the alpha version of this book or novel with my iPad. I've got an ebook version of the alpha version of the story. Now the alpha version apparently is pretty much done. There are some small tweaks that need to be done, but everything that I've read through will be basically the same in the final copy. I've now read through the story twice, making different decisions and different choices each time. And I've been very happy with the way that the story played out in both cases. And there have been some very big differences and different changes as I've been reading the story each time. But let me talk a little bit first about how this system works. This open world adventure book system is very interesting. And there are a couple things that make it very unique and stand out quite a bit to me. So let me explain how this works. At the beginning of the game, you set off from the vault headed towards the old world. And along the way, this is the first chapter of the book, based on decisions that you make, your character is going to be given two specialties. And those two specialties are going to dictate quite a bit of what's happening in the game. And the way this works is that while you're reading the different sections, when you're given a choice, sometimes the choices will say, if you have such and such specialty, you may make this choice. If you have some other specialty, you may make a different choice. And then there are also choices that don't require any specialties at all. So the other choices might be there in case you don't have the specialties that are required for the first choices. But also, if you have those specialties, you are more than welcome to choose the choices that don't require those specialties. Just having those specialties give you a few more options of choices which to make And that's sort of basically giving your character skills, and those skills will allow your character to do unique things because you have those skills. So that's the first unique piece about this. On top of these specialties, as you read through the story, you're also going to be having encounters, and those encounters are going to change the way the world works. And you're also going to be collecting items, and those items will allow you to interact with the world in different and unique ways. So this mix of specialties, encounters, and items, all of which will allow you to choose specific choices that are locked unless you have those things, makes each playthrough of the game, each read-through of the novel, again, this is not a game, each time you read through, based on your choices, you're going to be given different choices you can make because of encounters you've had, because of items you've found, and because of those specialties that you've basically chosen in the first chapter. So that's sort of almost forcing the story to be unique every time you read through. In addition to that, you're also going to be finding things along the way that don't affect the story at all, but add some unique fun to the story. There's a section on your character sheet. Okay, your character sheet is where you're going to be keeping track of all of these things, all of your specialties, your items, your encounters. There's also a section that's called the field log, and the field log is where you're just going to basically be taking notes of the stuff that you find along your way, right? This is a journey. You are exploring the old world to see how things have become over the last 100 years. And you're going to be wanting to take notes, and you're not actually physically having to take notes because the book is not going to ask you questions. But as a sort of representative expression of your journey and your exploration, you're going to find things along the way that aren't items that you can use or aren't milestones that are changing the story, but are unique enough that your character would reflect on finding these things. And those are the things that are going into your field notes. The other really interesting aspect of this story is that instead of just reading through as a normal choose-your-own adventure book and jumping from section to section randomly throughout the book is divided into chapters. And each chapter is going to represent a location or some event in time that your character is able to access. And you can't go to those chapters, you can't go to those locations or get to those events in time unless they've been unlocked through other things that you've done in the story. And you're often going to unlock more than one of those chapters at the same time. So in addition to reacting to things that are happening to you in the story, you also get to choose where you're going, and you also get to choose which events you're taking part in based on which chapters you read next. And sometimes at the end of a chapter, it will require you to move to a specific section or require you to move to one of these locations or events by going to a specific chapter. But very often you're given the choice, what do you want to do next? So all of this sounds like a lot, but it's presented in a very, very cool way. So I read the alpha version of the ebook. So all of this was basically just a separate PDF file character sheet that I was just checking things off as I played. But the actual version of this is going to come with, well, if you buy the physical version, it's going to come with stickers and a physical character sheet and a map. So if you've ever played something like Gloomhaven, you'll understand that when you find something new in Gloomhaven, you put a sticker location on the map. This is doing something just like that, and I think it's really, really cool. So every time I unlock a new location, I get to look in the back of the book and find the sticker for that location and find out where it is on my map and put it on my map. So not only does the story present me a new chapter to read, but it's also physically showing me on the map where it is in relation to where I am at the time. And I think that's really, really cool. And your character sheet works the same way. When I find an item, the items have stickers, right? And those stickers go onto your character sheet to show that you have those items, and you won't lose those items. Same thing when I find those things that go in my field log. I'm taking note in my character sheet by putting stickers of the things that I'm finding in my character sheet. And I think that adds a nice little twist. It doesn't really change anything, but that visual and physical aspect of adding stickers to a sheet or adding locations physically to a map really pulls you into the story, and I think that's really cool. One more thing that you do pick up as you're playing are sort of these characteristics that you get from based on what you're doing in the story. Things like resolve or compassion. And if you do certain things in the story, you're going to be changing your character in certain ways. And based on the way that your character is evolving, they may have new choices, or it may change the ending of the game. So every time you play, it's going to be very unique. And I said I've played through twice now. Both times I've played through, I've had two different specialties, nothing overlapping. I've had very, very, very different experiences, gone to very different places, found many different items. And it was, yes, the base concept of the story was the same, but the way that the story played out each time was very unique. And it didn't feel like either choice was the wrong choice or the lesser choice. It was just a different story that I was reading. And the ability to pick up a novel multiple times and get a new story every time I pick it up is great. I really like that. And I saw ending 4 and ending 5 as they were labeled in the book, which means there's at least 5 different endings to this. And also within inside one of those endings, based on a choice I made during the ending, it also changed something inside that ending. So you've got at least 5 endings with potential to have branching pieces within those endings. So there's a lot of content here. There's many different specialties. I believe there's 8. So you could have any combination of 2, right? You get a choice of 4 and a choice of 4, and the combination of those 4 and 4 gives you lots of variability. And you don't always have to use the specialties in the story if you don't want to. I've read through the story twice. I believe there are 29 chapters in the book, and I still haven't seen more than 14, 15 of them after playing through the game, reading through the story twice. After I've read through this twice and I've only seen half of the chapters, that's great. I can read through several more times and still be exploring and discovering new things every time I read through. And I think that's awesome, because how many times do you read the same novel over and over again? If I pick up a novel, I might read it again a year or two later because I want to see it again or read it again, or maybe I don't really remember it and I know that I enjoyed the experience. But this is going to tell me a different story for at least 4 or 5 different times, and every time I pick it up, it's going to be great. If there's anything nitpicky about it, some slight negatives, the chapter thing. The locations are great. The only small negative I had is that some of the chapter titles are, as I mentioned, are events rather than locations. And sometimes I wonder or I worry that the event title of that chapter is a little bit too informative. It's giving me too much information. And I don't often want to know what's going to happen until I get there. When they're marked as locations, that's great because I know what kind of place I'm going to, but I have no idea what's going to happen when I get there. But sometimes they're marked as event titles and it sort of foreshadows what's going to happen there. And there are 1 or 2 chapters that I still haven't gone to intentionally because I didn't like the sound of what was going to happen there. But that's not a bad thing, right? Because eventually, the more times I read this, I'm eventually going to go there just so I can see what happens. And that sort of bad feeling is not a bad thing in a story, right? Sometimes that negative thing can turn into something really cool storytelling-wise. So eventually I'm going there just to find out what's going on. And the same thing with the specialties. I don't always match all of the specialties in the book, but eventually I'm going to pick those specialties just so I can see what's going to happen next. So while that is a slight negative, it's not a negative that would keep me away from reading the story. The other thing I did notice on my first playthrough is that because there are so many decisions and there's such a wide story here based on all the different locations you can go to and all of the different things you can do in those locations, the first time I got an ending, there was a little bit of a disconnect between what I had done and what the ending said. And not because the ending said things that I didn't do, but because the ending transition had to be slightly vague because it couldn't immediately connect to all of the actual things that I had been doing through the story. Now, the second time I read through, the next ending I got was a little bit better than that. So it may have just been that one ending that was a little bit disconnected, but it wasn't a bad experience. It didn't kick me out of the story. I still felt like I was progressing. It just felt like they were kind of smoothing over the edge because they couldn't talk about the details. But again, I really enjoy this, and I'm going to keep reading. Now, a couple things. I did mention that this was an ebook version, an alpha version of the ebook. This book is coming to Kickstarter in the middle of November, and there are going to be a couple different levels, right? The base pledge is going to be the final version of the ebook. And if you're really interested in the ebook, you might want to go online right now. I'll put a link down below. You can pick up the alpha copy right now. And it seems to me that if you get the alpha copy right now, you get a free version of the final publication when it does come out as an ebook version. There will be a next level pledge that's going to be a physical copy of that book. And then from what I understand, there's also going to be a premium level that gives a sort of special edition version, hardback cover of the book that puts even more material in there. So if you can have more chapters or more information or more detail of this world, I would love to see it, because this is a very interesting world to dig into, because I know very little about it and I find out more and more and more as I'm exploring, and it's a very rich world. So more content is great to me. Now, the difference between the ebook and the physical book, it's a toss-up which one I prefer. Like I said, I've been reading this as an ebook, reading it in books on my iPad, and then using a pad or a PDF version of the character sheet with an Apple Pencil. So I can just swap back and forth between the book and the PDF on my iPad and just use the Apple Pencil to check things off, and it's super convenient. Not only that, in the ebook version of the story, as you're reading and any choice comes up, all of the choices are links to that piece of the story, and you can just click on the link and it will take you right to the section that you need to go to. Likewise, when you want to find a location, you click the table of contents button, and I can see every chapter, and I can just click straight to the chapter that I want to go to. So the convenience of the ebook is very, very nice. That being said, I'm a lover of books, and I will love to have a physical copy of this, especially because, as I mentioned, it's going to have this physical character sheet and physical map with stickers that we're going to put onto those character sheets and maps. I'll show you some pictures right here as I'm talking, because it looks really, really, really cool. The ability to sticker your character sheet, the ability to sticker the map as you discover things, and it just pulls you into the story. Now, having the physical copy does mean you're going to be flipping back and forth between pages, and it might get a little bit more cumbersome than the ebook version, but I think the physicality of it is worth having. So the decision between the ebook and the physical book is going to be completely up to you, but either way, I definitely recommend you check this out. One more thing I didn't talk about really, each of the chapters, at the start of a chapter, begins with some artwork. I'm going to show you a couple pictures right here now while I'm talking. The artwork in this book, while there's not a ton of it in there, is really, really cool. It's sort of this pencil sketch kind of look. That's how the map looks as well. And I really like the art. I would almost wish they'd throw in a couple extra pictures in the middle of chapters if they could. But I understand it's a novel, and adult novels generally don't have that many pictures in them. But the illustrations are great, and I would love to see more. So again, if you're a lover of novels, if you're a lover of sort of post-apocalyptic fiction, I don't want to give it too much of a weird sci-fi twist, because it's not a zombie story, it's not a monster book, but it is a post-apocalyptic, what has the world become kind of story. And if that's the kind of story you enjoy reading, the ability to read a novel that you have the ability to alter the story without destroying the narrative thread of the story is wonderful, and I strongly recommend this. Definitely keep an eye out for when it comes on Kickstarter in mid-November. When it does come out in Kickstarter in mid-November, I will add a link down below straight to the Kickstarter campaign page. And again, if you can't wait, check the link down below to pick up the alpha version right now and play around with that. I can't say enough good things about this. Definitely keep an eye out, and I hope they put out more books like this. Yeah, that's it from me today. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe below, and I'll see you next time. Thanks.